I hope you all are doing well. Today we have the honor of hosting a distinguished individual whose life journey is filled with rich experiences and insight. I am Nahal Farswali. I am delighted to welcome you all to this special interview. Before we dive into the conversation, let me take a moment to introduce myself. My name is Manahil Farswali and I am from Karachi, Pakistan, and I am a student of Rehan School, Karangi campus. Today we have the pleasure of hosting a sitting down with a remarkable person who has a wealth of knowledge to share with us. His name is Paul, and his journey through life is truly inspiring. Welcome, Mr. Paul. How are you?
I'm well, thank you. How are you?
All right, thank you so much. Can you please introduce yourself for my viewers?
I'm sorry I didn't catch what you said there. Can you type it? Yes, my name is Paul Bowen. I live in the United States. I am 78 years old. I am. I have a family, a wife, and two children. My children are all grown up now, um, and they don't live with me anymore. Um, I have spent a lot of my life as a teacher. Mostly I have taught philosophy. I have a degree in philosophy from Yale University, but more recently I have taught not in the university but in a school, the Schilling School for Gifted Children. And but I am on leave right now, and I have been semi-retired anyway. I don't teach full time anymore, uh, and so that's about it, I guess. Over to you. Well, let me see. Something I'll never forget. Uh, I think, well, one thing that springs to mind is during the period of time that we consider the 60s, that is from 1960 to, well, it goes to 1972 really, but we call that the 60s. So at that time, there was some social unrest, and so I remember we had a sit-in, which means you sit down and block something, and then there were these huge policemen with shields and batons, and so they would chase us away, and so that 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 was a little scary, and also exciting. And in the end, I didn't get hurt or anything, but it is something I will remember.
All right, thank you so much for your answer. My second question is while working with gifted children, do you have an inspiring or memorable story you'd like to share?
All right. Well, this was I was teaching a course. It was a physics course, and but that doesn't really matter to the story. But uh, a student asked me a question, and I realized that instead of answering his question completely, I only had to say two words, and that then he would figure out the rest for himself. So I said the two words, and I could see from his expression first he was puzzled, but then, I could see that he had figured out for himself how to solve the problem that he had, which is what I prefer. It's better if the student figures it out for themselves than if I explain everything. So that's the story.
All right, thank you so much for sharing your story. My next question is: during your teaching career, have you come across a student who was particularly talented or promising? Could you share their names and some memorable experiences with them?
Well, I have had several students who were quite amazing, but a very recent one, his name was, uh, I'm sorry, his name is escaping me. His last name was Castilla. Um, and well, I taught him several courses, and there was one course that he took all by himself with me, but he was the only student. Uh, and we studied quantum mechanics, which for a high school student is a very, very advanced subject. And then we also studied game theory, which again, it's not usually taught in high school. And but he was very good at it. In fact, he was better at it than I was. And I would make mistakes, but he would correct me. And so, and I found talking to his other teachers that they were also very impressed with him. He seemed to be good at everything. And I once said to him, you know, if you wanted to go into math or physics, you could succeed in it. He said no. He wanted to be a doctor. And I said, well, that's a wonderful profession. I can hardly think of any profession that does more good in a given time than a doctor. You save lives every day, or you could, you know, or you improve people's lives. And he said, yes, that's why I want to do it. So I thought that was a very good attitude, that he chose his profession and not for the money, although it's a very comfortable living to be a doctor, but he chose it because it was the way he could do the most good in the world. So I found that to be very impressive. So that's the story.
All right, thank you so much for your answer. So my next question is: teaching at both a university and a school for gifted children must have presented unique challenges. Can you describe how you adapted your teaching method for these different environments? Please unmute your mic.
Yes, sorry. Uh, by the time students are at the university, um, they have decided that they're going to learn, and they will not need to be distracted, or they will not get distracted. But with younger students, they get distracted, and you have a discipline problem sometimes. And so, in addition just to explaining what I want to explain, I have to work harder to make it interesting for them. And that's the main interest. Of course, they don't come in knowing as much, but usually we have set the course appropriately, so that's in a way not really a problem. But the main difference is that with younger students, you have to motivate them, and sometimes you have to remind them that what they're supposed to be doing. Okay, so that's how the first difference I could think of.
All right. So, sir, my next question is: even at the age of 78, do you have any new goals or passions that you are currently pursuing?
Well, that's an interesting question. New ones. I I don't think I have any that are completely new because, uh, but I'm learning things. For instance, I'm interested in making music, and so I'm practicing my instrument and my singing. And I suppose you could call this something new. Giving interviews is new for me. I have not done this before, so it's very interesting, and I'm grateful to you for giving me the opportunity. So that's new, and I guess I'm more concerned with my health than I used to be. You see, at my age, you begin to worry about your health more, um, and so I'm paying more attention to exercise and good diet and meditation and things like that that take care of my health. I spend more time than I used to with that sort of thing. So I guess that's new.
All right, thank you so much, sir. My next question is what values or principles have you followed throughout your life and that have been a major factor in your success and achievements?
Well, that's interesting because I have changed. I have changed in the course of my life somewhat. But I guess I've always wanted to learn things, and I've always wanted to. I've always wanted to somehow do good for the world, and uh, so those things. I think those are the two things that come to mind right away: to learn and to do good for the world in one way or another.
How has living in the US influenced your perspective and experience over the years?
Well, I have rarely spent any. I have not spent much time outside of the U.S., and so I'm not sure just how it is different from how it would be different from another place. But I think one thing is that I have always been economically comfortable. Not that everyone in the U.S. is, but many people are. And I haven't had to worry about where my next meal was coming from or medical care, things like that. And so I was born into the middle class, which people well, they're less comfortable than they used to be, but still, if you're in the middle class, you're not starving to death. And another thing is, I experience democracy. It's not a perfect democracy by any means, but I think compared to some places, I have a great deal of freedom. And excuse me, sorry. So I think that has been uh, very important. And so I have many opportunities. For example, I could go ahead and get an advanced degree, and there are other things I can do. So compared to many people in the world, I have a very comfortable life, and I'm very grateful for that. And uh, it's that aspect of it has been good. And of course, the United States has its problems, just like any other country, and there are things that are frustrating uh, about it. But on the whole, it has been good. It is good for me. I was very lucky to be born, I think, into the middle class in the United States.
All right, thank you so much for your answer. So, my next question is could you share a bit about your family and the roles they played in your personal and professional journey? Please unmute your mic.
Sorry. Uh, the the biggest effect that it had on my professional life was that that when my first child was born, my wife and I decided that she would work and I would be the one to stay at home and take care of the children. And so this is the way it was. Um, and when the children got older, I could do both. I could work part time and also take care of the children. But and then finally, when the children have grown up, I have been able to do much more work outside the home. But that was a big effect on my professional life. And of course, being in a family is a very enriching experience, can be very challenging experience, which is, being challenged a certain amount is a good thing because it makes you grow and develop, just so it doesn't overwhelm you, right? But if it doesn't overwhelm you, then challenge it can be good because it makes you strong. And so I had this challenge, and I think it's worked out pretty well. My kids both have grown up to be happy people who are doing good things in the world, and I couldn't really ask for anything more than that. So, so in that sense, it was, and of course, it's you have these people that you love in your family, and that's very important. So I think those are probably the things that are most important.
All right. Sir, over the years, the education system and teaching techniques have evolved. What changes have you observed and how have you adapted to them?
Well, as a matter of fact, I don't use a lot of techniques. I just behave in a very intuitive way. I see the student and I know what the student wants to learn or is supposed to learn, and I just act naturally. And it seems to work pretty well for me. Uh, some teachers use a lot of technology, but I'm satisfied if I just have a board to write on and I talk. And that for me has been sufficient. I think for other teachers, perhaps it's important to have more fancy technology. Um, and there are wonderful things you can do with it. For example, if you're teaching music, then you can go to YouTube or something like that and say, here's a piece of music you might not know about. And when I was young, there was nothing like that, and it's absolutely wonderful that we can do that. But that's not the kind of subjects that I teach. Books are. I sometimes use books, and maybe I'm not keeping up with the times. I don't know, but it seems to work out all right. My students seem to learn things. So perhaps I'm living in the past, but I don't use much of these modern devices.
Okay. All right. So, sir, in your opinion, how has the field of education evolved over the decades, and what trends do you see shaping its future?
Well, that's interesting. Of course, one thing is what I've already mentioned, that we have more technology now, and that's basically a good thing. Um, and although also we have to kind of compete sometimes with the internet and so on. That is, the kids go to the internet, and they're very influenced by the internet, and sometimes that's more important to them than what they are supposed to be learning in school. But it's not a big problem. So that's one way that the field of education has evolved. And another way is that it has evolved more towards what we call vocational education. Vocational vocational education is education that's aimed at preparing you for a job. Okay, which is important. You're going to have to work, most people. And but there's another tradition in our educational system is what we call a liberal education. And the purpose of a liberal education is just to develop you as a person and make you a cultivated person and appreciate literature and the arts and history and things like that that might not be essential for a job, but it makes you a better citizen. It's called the liberal arts because in the ancient times it was the education that people who were not slaves got. That was preparing them to be a citizen and take part in politics and that. And the vocational education was for the slaves. So liberal comes from the word meaning free. Well, we don't have slaves anymore, but still there is this distinction between education for work and education that's supposed to develop your ability to think and understand things and to take part. If you in a democracy, people have to be able to take part in the political process. Otherwise, it's not a democracy really. And so the liberal education tries to develop your ability to form your own opinions and to think things through for yourself, rather than just to form skills that someone will pay you to do. So I have seen the vocational education becoming a bit more important, and I think that's maybe not a good thing. Uh, because it's good to have people who have a well-rounded education.
All right, thank you so much for your answer. So, looking back, what advice would you give to our younger self based on the wisdom you gained from your rich life experiences?
Well, I think the first thing that comes to mind when you say that is I would recommend to my earlier self to be nicer. When I was young, I was always kind of angry and disrespectful for various reasons, and I didn't get along with people very well. But I'm not. I have become less of that at least, and I think this is a good thing. And I think it was just made me unhappy. You know, if you're constantly at odds with other people, you're not going to be happy. And so this is my advice I would give to anyone, including my younger self. Learn to get along well with people, to be helpful, and let them help you. Sometimes people won't let other people help them because they are too proud. They want to say, I did it all by myself. And sometimes that's a good thing, but at other times, you should let other people help you out. So that's probably, that's the first thing that comes to mind. Uh, and yeah, I guess that's the main thing.
Thank you, sir. And as we wrap up this insightful conversation, I want to extend my heartful gratitude to Mr. Paul for sharing his incredible life journey with us. Your experience, perspective, and wisdom have truly enlightened, and we are honored to have had this opportunity to learn from you. I also want to thank you, all of you, our audience, for your presence and engagement. This has been a meaningful
Oh,
experience.
uh,
Can you?
well, I didn't fully understand what you said, but uh, well, would you try again?
Okay. Before we close, I'd like to remind everyone that our journey of learning and growth never stops. Paul's story serves as a reminder that life is a continuous journey filled with challenges, triumphs, and as endless opportunities for self discovery. With that, I bid you all farewell, hoping that insights gained from today's conversation will inspire us to embark on our new paths with renewed confidence. Thank you once again, Mr. Paul, and thank
Thank
you
you.
all for being a part for this remarkable conversation. Yes,
Yes,
Mr.
Mr.
Paul.
Well, yes, well, thank you for having me. I enjoyed being a guest, and if you like, we could do it again sometime. And flourish and be happy in the meantime. May life treat you well, and uh, that's it, I guess.
Thank you,
Thank you,
sir.
sir.
You
You
are
are
good.
good.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Bye.
Bye.